looking at the past 6 months of the rapid changes that are taking place in emerging markets, particularly in the economies of China and India, given the huge dependence that Australia and Australian organizations have on these economies, it is imperative to actually probe further, deeper into how Australian organizations need to re-strategize in order to actually be more globally competitive in the future.
So the major economies of India and China are changing quite dramatically. And if you look at the historical trend, they have increased in terms of their GDP over the last 20 years, almost by over 6 to 7%. In the recent past, they've gone through a lot of turbulence where they have taken a hit, and the GDP growth rates have been actually forecasted to be much lower than what it was anticipated earlier.
The Chinese economy is at a crossroads. It has had investment-led growth for the past 30 years, and it needs to change to rebalance to consumer-led growth. And I think that's the current challenge that faces the government in China and industry in China.
There is such an excessive dependence of Australian companies and Australia as a nation on emerging economies, particularly that of China, that any small slowdown in the Chinese economy would have a significant long-term impact on Australian businesses.
I think that there is a persistent belief that China can solve any problems and will continue to grow at very high rates for a long period of time. I don't agree with that point of view. I think it can have lower growth and lower demand for commodities in the short term. And so I think that people need to adjust their investment plans to that. And equally at the same time, Australian companies that have the ability to export services and agriculture need to focus more heavily on China.
It's a 1.2, 1.3 billion market in India, so it's a massive market. It's on our doorstep, so I think there's great opportunities for us to look at beyond just things like supply of resources that we've done. Education, IT is an area which has traditionally been strong between India and Australia. I think the emerging market opportunities are in retail. I think there's tourism. I think there's different forms of education, enhanced education that we can look at working with India. There's an infrastructure development, and of course, entertainment's a big industry in India. So I think there's also an opportunity to look at investment in those areas there.
One of the big opportunities for Australian companies is to actually go into these economies and make significantly larger investments compared to what they have done so far. So, for example, in the case of India, where the investment by Australian corporates is only about $1 billion, they can actually make much more and engage with companies there in India for the long run.
First of all, I think you need to look at the historical pattern, to look at the long-term trends rather than just looking at the immediate events. And the second thing, I think it's important in many countries, the governments play an important role. It's important to work with the government and see what you can offer to enhance the local community so that you can get a buy-in from the government.
Governments do things the way it is. It's a very bureaucratic country, and instead of criticizing the bureaucracy, you've got to just learn how to work within it, within their rules, and just adapt to that's the way things are done in India.
My advice to Australian companies operating in the region would be to put a scenario of lower growth into their business plan, lower growth for China into their business plan, and see how the business plan operates with that in place. And if they can survive that, then they should do well.
Don't shut the door on doing business with these countries just because you think that there's a slowdown there. As I said, they're very, very large markets. They, both China and India have populations over 1 billion respectively. So I think that's you've got to look for products that you can take in there, adapt to those markets, and even if it's a niche play that you may look at developing, it's still sizable in terms of what you can do back here in Australia.